as you know, Governor McCrory, this really, I mean, Pat McCrory is just the worst of the worst. Under his tutelage, North Carolina has become incredibly suppressive of votes. They passed that emergency law that basically prevented cities from having any respect for transgender people, protecting things like housing for transgender people or people of other sexual orientations across the spectrum. I think even they inhibited the raising the minimum wage, and it goes on and on. I mean, it's been relentless, and it started the pushback there has been the Moral Mondays campaign. So Pat McCrory loses the election. Takes him a long time to acknowledge that. Roy Cooper wins the election, and the legislature in North Carolina, they have a special emergency session, presumably to deal with a disaster relief funding. But instead, what the Republican legislatures were really doing was they could basically rewrite the laws so that it would hamper the new incoming governor's ability to do just about anything. Here it is. They would move from giving the State Board of Elections and county official boards a majority of seats for the sitting governor, and they would split it up. But it's worse than that. Apparently, the Democratic Party appointees to the election board would chair in odd-numbered years. So they're going to even it out, right? Instead of like traditionally giving more seats to the incumbent party, they're going to even it out, and they're going to give the Democratic Party election board would chair in odd-numbered years, and the Republican Party appointees would chair in even-numbered years. Meaning that the Republicans would chair in each of the years in which there are legislative, congressional, and presidential elections. On top of that, the state Supreme Court would be limited in reviewing state constitutional and federal challenges, giving the power instead first to an en-banc panel of intermediate appellate court judges who are, of course, Republican majority. Any lawsuit over these alleged rules will end up before the state Supreme Court with its new Democratic majority unless a special session itself produces a court packing plan. That would be the other thing. And if that happens, the court itself would have to resolve. Okay, so basically the idea would be the Democrats are going to control the state Supreme Court when they're inaugurated unless the Republicans now add seats to that court and have McCrory appoint them. I mean, this is really just appalling. It's amazing. And I don't know if they're going to do it or they're going to get away with it. I don't know how they can be stopped if they do this. But here is the Reverend Barber on William Barber on with Joy Reid talking about this extremism that has continues to run amok in North Carolina.
The Moral Mondays movement was able to push back or beat back an attempt by Republicans in the legislature to pack the Supreme Court. Yeah. Explain what they wanted to do.
Yeah, there was a rumor out, and they were really considering doing a legislative trick, taking the pain and the tragedy of people who have been hurt by the hurricane and the flood, and using that to cover a trick to stack the courts by adding 2 slots to the Supreme Court, would put it back into an extremist majority, simply because an African-American man won 76 counties, over 300,000 votes more than his opponent, and now the court is a more progressive court. It's some of the most cynical stuff, Joy, that we've seen, and we had hundreds of people that came out on the first day basically to push back against that attempt.
And you had Governor Pat McCrory refusing to go, essentially, refusing to concede the election, fought it in every way he could. But you now have the Republican legislature, the House and the Senate, attempting to essentially make the governorship not worth having and take away all the powers of the governor because a Democrat will have it. What on earth, and what are you guys doing to combat that?
Well, you know, this is extremism gone amok. I mean, these folk are not even Republicans. They are on some other, some other world. I mean, my great-grandfather was a Republican. They are just power hungry. I just got a report that they've now entered 15 bills. Now, mind you, they came in saying they're concerned about people who were in the floods, but all that was a cover. They've introduced 15 bills. One of them actually changes the makeup of the state boards of election and the county boards of election, because currently whoever gets elected governor, whoever party he's in, that's how the makeup of the local boards look like. And we're going through all these bills tonight. We're pushing back hard. Our lawyers are standing ready. This is also why, Joy, we need Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, because some of this stuff they would not be able to do in a pre-clearance state. But we're even considering civil disobedience. In fact, I'm on the phone tonight about that, because this is just wrong. And I call on all national media to get down in these states, because the most regressive extremist stuff is happening in our states. And this is extremism gone amok. It is ugly, it is mean-spirited, it is unconstitutional and undemocratic.
And you know,
and William Barber, I think, was the first set of voter disenfranchisement years ago now, at least 4 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, started having protests every Monday, and thus the Moral Mondays movement was born. And he gave an amazing speech at the DNC. I mean, well, I guess it just remains to be seen whether or not these Republicans in North Carolina will pass this. You know, at the very least, you got a guy like William Barber who, you know, there's going to be some accounting for this.
There was an important point that he made. He said, look at what's happening in the states. And the states have always been this sort of forerunner for these horrific overreaches and extremist policies they're pushing. So I did think the IM before was a little over the top, but I do think that this is more sort of like how it would happen if they were sort of to translate that type of next level of overreach on a national level. So definitely important to mind it.
Hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Subscribe.